What's up, idols? It's Cece Lesson 3. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. This is a story time I'm particularly excited to hear about. For one, we get to hear about what it's like to be a foreigner working at a K-pop company, and two, we get to hear good old-fashioned love stories. But before we get into this, if you want to see more story times like this, in particular, if you want to see another beautiful love story, then check out my Patreon. And the reason I have to put it on Patreon is because she went into some explicit details about what their second night together was like. Here's a clip. Seeing him with his hair wet was amazing. He was so much hotter when I saw how curly it was and how it looked wet. After the shower, we sat in my bed, only in the towels, and talked more. We had snacks and I lighted some candles. He offered to rub my shoulders, which yes, thank you. His hands were strong yet soft. Sometime after, maybe about 10 minutes, we had sex. He kissed my neck and asked me to lay on my stomach for back massage next. He then started massaging my butt. Then he started to touch and enter me with... So yeah, guys, if you want to hear more story times like that, stuff that I can't particularly put on YouTube without risk of demonetization, then I highly suggest you check out my Patreon. I think you'll really like the videos we have there. They're racking up at this point. Also, if you're curious and you want to see what my boyfriend looks like, I have a few pictures of us together there as well. So thank you all so much. Everybody who watches these videos, everybody who's joined my Patreon, you have no idea what you mean to me. I really, really appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Right, for this story time though, as K-pop becomes more and more global, the demand and the reach and expansion to foreigners and foreign countries also increases. This means they are hiring foreigners. Some of the positions global workers are now eligible for are idol manager, as well as marketing and business direction roles in K-pop entertainment companies. For this story time, we're going to call her Lilo and Stitch. She didn't tell me specifically what her degree was, but she says she has a background in IT and like media marketing. Because she's considered a very skilled worker, her company sponsored her visa. She's not an entertainer or a dancer or a singer or anything like that. She's in communication, management, and the media aspect of it all. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in the music entertainment industry. So first, she wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what's required for a job like this, like how you could get a job like this if that's what you want. And then she's going to tell us how she met her man, how they got engaged, how they got married. So one thing she really wanted you guys to know, if it's anything like what she's experienced, you'll have to be able to speak, read, and write in Korean at a proficient level. She also said your resume and your cover letter should also be in Korean. And don't expect any special treatment as a foreigner. You have to work just as hard as the Koreans. You have to have as much free time to devote to work as the Korean people do. She said you're basically on standby at their women call. Even when you're not at work, you're still at home doing work that pertains to your work. And Lilo also wanted to let you guys know she doesn't make a whole lot of money. She only makes about 28,000 US right now, but as she spends more time with the company, she will start to make more. But it's not the best, most high-paying job, but it's an exciting job. And all her needs are met. You know, she can pay her rent, she can eat, she's not struggling. It's just not as much as you could expect. She also said that she's noticed they target English-speaking foreigners, and of course, you know, you do have the need for like Spanish speakers or Japanese speakers, Mandarin speakers, but for now she's seeing a lot of people who speak English being sought out. She even said she started seeing positions that were only for foreigners, like no Korean apply, only a foreigner. She said it's a 9-to-5 job mostly, but again, a lot of the times, even when you're home, you need to get back to work immediately if they tell you to. She did say that she sees the idols pretty often, but they're younger and they're not quite her vibe, so she doesn't really know who they are. And a lot of times she has no idea who anybody is, because the dancers, the singers, the staff, they wear masks, the cameramen, they're in masks and hats, and she doesn't know who is who most of the time. It's like peaks and valleys of being busy. Like when there's time in between comebacks, you can relax a little bit, but when the time for the comeback ramps up, and when the time for the comeback is here, you don't sleep. So if you're into the K-pop aspect of it and you know these younger groups, you may be starstruck, but she said she's not affected by that anymore. She said the people at her company are very friendly. They welcomed her with open arms, and they also ask her for her opinion on a lot of different topics because she's a foreigner, because she's a Westerner, and because she spends so much time at work. They became her friends and her family. She doesn't have a lot of time to socialize with people, to go on dates with people outside of work. And that brings us to a coworker we're going to call Sungwoo. I was going to call him Stitch, but that feels kind of rude. Stitch is adorable, but not like for a human name, you know? So yeah, they became friends and they get coffee together, complain about how busy they were, complain about how needy some people were, missing family, lack of sleep. Basically, they were able to trauma bond. And because they were in the same industry, they could relate to each other very easily. So she ended up meeting Sungwoo when some of her friends invited him and his friends, and eventually it started to get to a situation where Lilo and Sungwoo would meet one-on-one without the friends, but it was still a casual thing. Like, they weren't dating yet. They still would just meet up one-on-one for some coffee, for some lunch, just to talk, shoot the shit. She says Sungwoo is tall. She added like 9 L's, so he's tall. But she says she's also tall. She's like 5'9", so him being tall, she appreciates it more. She said he's really handsome, but initially she found him kind of scary and intimidating because his facial features are pretty harsh, and he's also older. He's not like an old man, but he's older than her. She said he's very quiet initially, but the more they started to meet up and talk, he opened up, and he's actually pretty silly, and that really surprised her. Even when they would take pics together in like silly photo booths, he'd be the first person to reach for like the headband with a heart on it and grab some plushies. So yeah, they started out as really, really good friends with each other first before the romantic interest was there. But one day, Sungwoo started to talk with Lilo about Korea long term. He asked her like if she missed her family, when's the last time she got to go back home, could she see herself living in Korea like permanently. She says she absolutely loves Korea. She has no intentions of going back home. This is home for her now. Her friends and her coworkers are her family. She loves her job, and he was so relieved to hear that. The reason why will be explained in a little bit. But yeah, he was getting pretty flirty. He was asking her about dating and all that stuff, and it made her feel a little nervous because she thought that, you know, talking like this with a coworker or even dating a coworker was like a big no-no. But apparently at this particular company, it's not a big deal at all. And I feel like they would be cruel if they made it a problem because they have no free time to really go out and find their own partner outside of work. So basically, as long as you're not distracted at work by your partner, there's no obvious PDA, there's no problem whatsoever at this particular company, which is great. So they bonded over the fact that they have no time to date, but they do love their job, but they're getting older and they're like, what should I do? I should settle down, but how? There's no time for that.
What more do you want from me?
So as they talked about dating, she revealed that she's been on a few dates before, but nothing serious. She's also too busy to see them again. A lot of times they just wanted to sleep with her. And after a while, she basically decided to throw herself into work and stop thinking about boys and dating. And there was this part in the email where she mentioned how Korea is doing the most to try and make couples get married and have kids again, except addressing what's preventing them from having kids and getting married, i.e. work and the cost of living. There's literally no time to raise a human. She said that's another thing that her and Sungwoo talks about so much. It's really funny watching Korea do everything and reach for the most out there solutions when it's pretty obvious and clear why people aren't having kids and getting married anymore. People can just about afford to take care of themselves. Raising a human is expensive. They spend a lot of their time at work or doing work-related things even when they're not at work. And she said until the government addresses that, it ain't gonna change. In fact, everyone she knows at her company is childless. One of her friends is expecting, and she's a woman, and she has to decide if she's gonna keep working or stay home as a full-time mom. And the dad works too. One thing she found kind of frustrating was it's not even a discussion or in the realm of possibility that he would stop working. No, it's fully expected for her to stop working. They make around the same amount at different jobs, and they both make decent money, so they can get off on one parent's income, but she loves her job and she hates that she has to choose. So that's another situation a lot of women find themselves in. She said they might get a nanny. They don't know what they're going to do just yet. Sorry, I just find it incredibly frustrating to see all these irrelevant solutions Korea's government has to their rapidly declining birth rate. Here's one, for example, that I just saw in the Korea Herald. We were talking about that, me and Marika, a few days ago in that video. They have this plan to start sending girls to school, to potentially start sending girls to school a year before the boys, and here's why. A state-run research organization in South Korea has sparked a debate after its analysis suggesting that sending girls to school a year earlier could help boost fertility rates last week. The Korea Institute of Public Finance, a government-funded center dedicated to evaluating the country's tax system and public spending, proposes sending girls to school early, assessing that it can make men and women more attracted to each other when they reach marriageable age, because men develop more slowly than women. Considering the fact that men's development is slower than women's, allowing women to enter school a year earlier may contribute to making men and women more attractive to each other in the future when they reach the right age for marriage. The report noted in its May issue on fiscal and policy recommendations to respond to the declining working population. Its suggestion is based on the percentage that men are sexually attracted to relatively younger women and women are attracted to relatively older men. Notice they didn't say sexually for the girl to man part. So like, are they, like that's not, no, stop it.
Get some help.
Stop doing that!
because when they get to the marriageable age, they're still not going to be able to afford raising a kid. And with all the gender issues running rampant in Korea. Sorry, this video ain't about that. Back to the love story. So basically, Lilo and Sungwoo agree that it is very difficult to date, plan a future like marriage and kids, also while working as much as they're required to work. So then Sungwoo suggested they date each other. We see each other all the time at work. Why not make it official? It would be pretty convenient, no? And then Lilo's like, is that allowed? I mean, you're my coworker. He's like, well, none of us are superior to the other. We just happen to work at the same company, but like when our work isn't directly related to each other, should be fine. As long as we're not obviously, you know, PDAing all over each other, making out. As long as our work quality doesn't slip, we'll be fine, right? Let's see what happens. If we keep it professional, we will be absolutely fine. And she was happy to hear that because she was developing a little crush on him. 사랑해, 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 사랑해요. 안녕하세요. 사랑해. She wasn't sure how the coworkers would react to this because, you know, they're dating. That's kind of a big deal. So initially they decided to keep it a little secret. If it becomes more official, if it goes somewhere, then sure, let everybody know. But if it fizzles out, no harm, no foul. No need to get everyone worked up over nothing. And because they had already spent so much time together one-on-one, it wasn't suspicious at all when they would do this, even though now they're dating. So there was one day where he picked her up after work and they went straight to a restaurant for dinner. They didn't really have time to change or anything like that. It wasn't like a super fancy place. They were just starving and wanted to spend some time together, which is so sweet. He told her to order whatever she wanted because he wanted to make sure she had a good meal. And of course it went well because they had already spent so much time talking with each other. The chemistry was already there. The only real difference was he's a lot more complimentative on her appearance and her personality and saying how beautiful she is. He was also more like, more what's the word? Not skinship. He touched her more, physical touch. They were holding hands, and the nature of their conversation did change a bit because they started to talk more about each other's types, what they were looking for in a partner, past relationships and things like that you talk about when you're getting to know someone you're dating. And the more they talked, the more she felt like they were very compatible. He talked about how he enjoyed his free time and his free space, but because they have so much of their time wrapped up in work, and neither of them seemed like the jealous type, so it seemed like it was going to be a really good fit. And when he talked about past relationships, she was very relieved that he was so open and willing to talk about it, because a lot of people tend to be more secretive and it's like, I don't want to talk about that. So yeah, they were talking about past relationships. He was very open about it, and he did reveal that he used to be engaged. And that was one of the reasons why he was really focused on making sure that if she was going to stay in Korea, she was going to stay in Korea, because he had a previous fiance move abroad for work to New Zealand, and she liked it there a lot and decided to not come back to Korea. So he was heartbroken, naturally. He proposed to her. They were going to get married. When he first decided to pursue Lilo, he's like, you good in Korea? You're going to stay here? I can't go through this heartbreak again. And even when he told her that, she's like, oh, that's why you asked. Oh, that's so sweet. But yeah, she reassured him she's not going anywhere. She loves Korea. She's there for the long haul. So the chemistry was chemistrying. And naturally, you know, as you're talking, getting to know someone, certain urges and desires may come up between two lovers, right? You know, you're getting there. And she was really worried about taking that next step because, yeah, they've been used to seeing each other one-on-one like this for a while now, even before they decided to call it a date. But now, if they sleep together, that really changes things. She said it was very clear that they both wanted to.
Believe me, I want to.
But they were also both very hesitant to cross that line. She said once she let him in, she knew that it had to work. Like, he had to be her boyfriend. This had to be a long-term thing. Because, you know, sex isn't a big deal for everybody, but it's a big deal for her. So after dating for about a month, they decided to take this next step in their relationship. Why am I doing this? The first time was awkward, as you can imagine, because up until now, you know, they seemed like really good friends with good chemistry, but now they were lovers. They were actually in a relationship together, because as soon as they were done, he officially asked her to be his girlfriend. That is great timing. Not before, because that's when it's like, oh, you just want me to be your girlfriend, so I feel better about sleeping with you. You just want to play with me.
I want to play a game.
But if it's after, it's a bit more reassuring. Sorry, man, dating is treacherous.
War. Terrible war.
Once they finally made it official at work, he stopped hiding it. He would send her flowers, and the card would clearly say his name. It was not a secret anymore. He'd swing by and drop her off some coffee. She would bring him lunch, and they would hold hands. And they even had the occasional kiss on the cheek. That seems pretty okay, right? That's mostly professional. It's not rude. It's not gross. Now, when they first started to date, they were pretty lucky because it was at one of those, not peaks, but like a valley. It was not very busy right now. But, or a trough, is that? It's like a peak and a wave and then a trough, right?
맞다.
But the timing of when they decided to become an official relationship was really bad because they were gearing up for some major comebacks. And it was hard because they didn't really have a lot of time to spend together anymore. So they kept up their relationship as best as they could for this whole first year. Coffee breaks, lunchtime, he'd drive her home, she'd spend the night at his place. Whatever time they could spend together, they did. So one day, while they were all on vacation in Bali, things took a beautiful turn. She longed for the beach and vacation and relaxation, and they all finally got it. And it wasn't just Sungwoo and Lilo, it was like all the friends. They all decided to take a trip together to a resort in Bali. And Lilo wasn't expecting anything on this trip. She just wanted to relax by the beach. They had group dinners, they went hiking, they went diving, they had spa days, and of course they spent an abundance of time on the beach. So, not thinking too much about one particular night, they were at a group dinner when Sungwoo stands up and proposes a toast. He starts off, to our first vacation in God knows how long, to success at work, to all the friendship we've developed, all the good things you want to hear when you're on vacation with your homies. But then he turned his attention to Lilo. He said, there's no secret that this job comes with pros and cons. You guys are all aware of this. But one of the good things is it brought me closer to this amazing woman. By the way, all this is in Korean. She speaks Korean. I'm just saying this in English because that's what she typed out. But he don't speak English. She said it was a very brief speech. And then he turned to her, got closer to her, got down on one knee as he reached in his pocket, pulled out a ring, and asked her to marry him. She hesitated at first because she thought it might be a prank. Because all the friends, all the homies was there, and they had been to way nicer restaurants together as a group. He picked this place on a night that's stormy and rainy. It didn't seem like the type of mood where he would do something like this seriously. But she said yes. All the co-workers were shocked. They didn't know if this was really happening. None of them knew this was coming. He told nobody because he didn't want to risk anybody telling her. And they were all so encouraging. They were all happy for them, and you love to see it. So they were engaged at this point, and they ended up being engaged for like another year. So 2 years together so far. Well, almost 2 years. She said they were engaged for almost a year, and they just recently tied the knot this spring in Jeju at a resort in Seogwipo. She was really sad that her family didn't get to come out and see it, but she's hoping that one of these days when they get another vacation, they can go back to the States. She can bring him because they haven't even met this boy yet, and hopefully have like another smaller ceremony for her family because his family came and they're all supportive. They kept saying that it was a day they never thought they'd see come. They're like, wow, we were starting to think he was never going to marry. That's kind of normal these days to just stay single. But they were happy to see him married, and they were happy to see him happy. That's all that should matter. It's early June, so we're still in spring. And she said one of the things that she felt really drawn to him about is the conversation they would have as friends, because there is a lot of anti-feminism in Korea, mostly between 20s and 30-something-year-old men. And one thing she felt so relieving about him is he was not that. She says she secured her an oppa, an older guy who understands. He's supportive of women's rights. He's very patient. He says, I see, the women working at our company, and they work hard as fuck. They deserve a lot better than what they're getting these days. So yeah, she said he's a very understanding and patient man. He works really hard, but he doesn't let it take over his whole life, which is a hard thing to do in Korea. He always makes time to see her. He makes time for his wife. He makes sure she doesn't feel neglected. He sees his family. She doesn't know how he balances it all, but she appreciates him for it. We need more of this. Don't get me wrong, it is always good to be aware of the fuckery in the world, but I love, and I love hearing these stories. Another one that was a pleasure to read, just like the one on Patreon. Sungwoo, Lilo, congratulations. I hope this is a long-lasting marriage. She said they've dabbled in the discussion of kids, but again, in this economy, how? Okay, how are we going to afford to raise a kid? How are we going to find the time to raise a human? It's not possible right now. It's not feasible. He's not pressuring her. She's still young enough. She's got time. So there might be an update if there's a baby on the way. But for now, everything is great. No need to rush anything else. And I'm happy. Are y'all happy? Because I'm so happy now. If you enjoyed this story time, please check out some of the other videos on the playlist. It's about to pop up on the end screen. We have so many story times like this. Foreigners dating in Korea. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you so much for watching. If you did, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Annyeong.